The last episode, on Richard F. Burton, I covered the first 33 years of Burton's life. An explorer like no other. He moved around Europe, growing up learning several languages, then continued this in the military tour in India and Pakistan, again learning the local languages and becoming known as the fiercest soldier in the English forces. He traveled to places alone, which if discovered, he would have been killed, such as Mecca in Saudi Arabia and Harar in Ethiopia. Another trip he was in Somalia, in a storm of javelins during an attack by Somali tribes. One impaled itself through both sides of Burton's face. He seemed to ignore it and continued fighting. War broke out in 1853 in Crimea, today disputed as part of Ukraine but occupied by Russia. The war had to do with a disagreement of Christian rights in the Holy Land. The Holy Land, the Bible lands of Israel, was at the time part of the Ottoman Empire, ruled by the Turkic people who had migrated centuries before from Western Mongolia. Russia represented the rights of the Christian Orthodox, and France represented the rights of the Catholics. Great Britain entered this with geopolitical interest in not having Russia gain a greater influence in the conflict. This was an extension of what has been known as the Great Game, a strategic land battle between Russia and Great Britain. The Allies were the Ottoman Empire, France, Great Britain, and Sardinia against Russia and a small Greek army. Burton entered the conflict as chief of staff for a general. He saw his chance for glory in Kars, today in northeastern Turkey, close to the border of Armenia, and pleaded with the British ambassador in Istanbul to allow him a plan to take Kars. The ambassador turned down the request, as Kars was going to be given to Russia in an effort of peace talks. Later, Africa again called, but for a deeper understanding and travel effort. In preparation, Burton became more familiar with the early explorers of Africa and their quest for the discovery of the source of the Nile. When the source is spoken of, it means the most distant source of the river. The Royal Geographical Society would fund the trip, just as they have funded many of the famous discovery trips taken by English adventurers. John Speke would make the trip as a subordinate. Speke, also a British Army officer, was 6 years Richard's junior. Speke had developed a reputation as an explorer, having journeyed through the Himalayas, Mount Everest, and into Tibet. The quest to discover the source of the Nile was an ancient one. A first-century merchant from Ptolemaic or Greek Alexandria claimed the source of the Nile to be from Mountains of the Moon, a local term for Rwenzori Mountains, found on the border of Uganda and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Named Mountains of the Moon because the snow caused the local people to compare it to the moon. The name Mountains of the Moon remained on world maps through the late 19th century, then disappeared as it was thought incorrectly to not exist. During preparation for the trip in East Africa, twice local hired men tried to kill Burton. Both times he fought them off. The trip to East Africa was a constant battle with malaria and other illnesses. He was the first European to see Lake Tanganyika. At 420 miles, it is the longest lake in the world. Today, the lake is found in the countries of Tanzania, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Zambia, and Burundi. Burton thought Tanganyika was the source of the Nile. Once there, he was sidelined with illness, and John Speke went out on his own, claiming Lake Victoria to be the source of the Nile. When the trip was over, Burton, as he often did, made a poor decision in not returning to London immediately. He often did not make a choice based on helping himself politically. The Royal Geographical Society had paid for the trip, and a quick return to England to explain his finds was probably what was expected. He instead went to Mecca, while Speke quickly returned to London and arranged for an expedition to explore the northern shores of Lake Victoria, having promoted his claim. Speke's claim of Lake Victoria as the source of the Nile would be accepted. Richard, throughout his life, did nothing when mostly untrue but disparaging rumors circulated about him. Other times he didn't defend his evidence of a claim. He was mean-spirited, at times very bad in his mood, and often disagreeable. His temper, being blunt and not giving to properness, caused him great problems. He did seem loyal, was easy to forgive, at times a good friend, but quickly to develop enemies. His public image was poor, and because of it, was not given the recognition he should have. The known southernmost source of the Nile would be updated in 1937 by German Burkhard Waldecker. He found a stream based at the 7,000-foot Mount Kikizi in Burundi to be the source. In 2011, another expedition found a more distant source in the mountain slopes of the Nyungwe forest in Rwanda. In Khartoum, Sudan, the White Nile and the Blue Nile come together, and from there, flowing north, it becomes known as just the Nile. The White Nile is longer, thus receiving the term the source overall of the Nile. The Blue Nile source is Lake Tana in Ethiopia and was determined with an expedition under Ptolemy II Philadelphus 2,400 years ago, the son of Ptolemy I Soter, the general of Alexander the Great. In 1860, Burton went to the U.S. to study Mormonism and spent time with Brigham Young. Brigham was the second president of Mormonism. Richard also visited the East Coast, Eastern Canada, Sacramento, San Francisco, New Orleans, other areas of the southern U.S., and wrote a 700-page book on his trip. Richard's life was about to change, and that is what the next episode is about. Please support the channel by subscribing, liking, and letting others know. Thank you so much for watching.